And joining me now is Shaniqua McLennan, Vice President of Political Strategy at Crooked Media, and Rina Shah, political strategist and former senior GOP congressional advisor. So, Shaniqua, I want to start with you. Have Democrats successfully spun this as a victory for them? And what does it tell you that Democrats can use their leverage in this tiny House GOP majority? I mean, this all came up again, this government shutdown, because it was Republicans who couldn't sort of get it together and get the numbers they needed without Democrats.
Yeah, I think anytime you see a large part of the Republican caucus not vote for something that the Republican speaker has put on the floor, it's going to be really easy for Democrats to make the case that they won. I think especially Donald Trump did not get the thing that he wanted. And Donald Trump wasn't even the person who stopped this bill from being passed initially. It was Elon Musk. So I think as people watched along, they saw just a lot of confusion and chaos from Republicans. So it's really easy for Democrats to make the case that they did what they were able to do and are going to have a lot of leverage going into this next Congress.
And Rina, you posted on Thursday that you thought President Biden should speak up about the budget chaos. Now that it's done, everything's been pushed to March. Do you still feel that way? Or did you think it was the right thing for him to say to make some calls, but really leave this to Republicans and lawmakers to decide?
I think Biden's silence bothered me because it was the federal government that was about to shut down. I felt that he could have said anything to show any degree of leadership. He's still very much in office, and what Republicans like to paint him as is asleep at the wheel. So I realize that these are two separate branches, but often just going and physically huddling with your fellow Democrats could have shown a commitment to getting something done. At the end of the day, it was Democrats that saved Republicans here. But what this whole funding battle really highlighted is two different visions of what is fiscal responsibility and what about spending reform. In Washington, Biden can always inject himself in those conversations. Again, though it was the legislative branch here trying to carry out its core legislative duty, which was to fund the federal government, there were a number of players that were just frankly absent from the table. And maybe on the one hand, you can look at this thing and blame it on Elon Musk, right? But I think that's just way too convenient, because if you're just blaming one person, you're losing sight of the bigger picture. The fact that the GOP no longer sees itself as needing to be responsible about funding priorities here, and priorities that are not that different in nature from a few years ago.
Yeah. Shaniqua, Senator John Fetterman was asked about his outlook for Trump's presidency. Take a listen to what he said.
I've been warning people, like, you got to chill out. You know, like the constant, freak out. It's not helpful. So, pack a lunch, pace yourself, because he hasn't even taken office yet.
Do you think he has the potential to be a successful and a good president?
I hope, because I'm not rooting against him. If you're rooting against the president, you are rooting against the nation.
Shaniqua, what do you make of that?
I think Senator Fetterman watched a different 2024 election than the rest of us. I totally agree that Democrats should work with Donald Trump where it makes sense, where agendas are aligned. But by and large, we saw Donald Trump promise to basically prosecute his enemies, to pardon January 6th rioters, and he's continuing to talk about those things now. I think anyone trying to normalize his second presidency should just be honest with themselves and who they're essentially holding hands with and trying to convince the rest of us is going to, be safe for the country. And I don't think it's fair for him to point fingers at Democrats and say, calm down. There's a lot that people should be concerned. Democrats spent most of the election talking about the threat that Donald Trump would be to democracy, and I think he's showing us that now with some of these cabinet picks. I'll concede that everything is not a fire, but there's a lot more fire than I think John Fetterman is alluding to.
Rina, what are your thoughts?
I think Senator Fetterman's words are spot on, and maybe this Democrat Party would be far better off today, and maybe they would have won this election if they listened to him. I think there is so much concern about what Democrats are doing, and with that shifts the focus off the Republicans. I think this Republican Party in this new year can be successful if they unite around solutions that prioritize driving down the debt, but also address national priorities like innovation action, defense. Democrats can still be part of that, but being angry all the time doesn't serve anyone. Drawing your ire and fire at one person doesn't do that. Whether it's Speaker Johnson or Trump, making enemies is just not the way Washington can function. And it is so dysfunctional for the very reason that so many leaders get here, stay here, but don't remember that having the confidence of the people requires a few different steps, and anger is not one of them.
Well, thank you so much. That's, of course, we're going to be continuing to talk about these issues. And the last thing you want to happen when you take a